This question comes up a lot, and it's an excellent topic for debate. People like RFK Jr., Joel Salatin, the big regenerative health crowd really want to take away the subsidies for corn and soy in particular. According to people like them, the subsidies for corn and soybeans are the reason that America's farming and health situation is as screwed up as it is. I don't necessarily agree wholesale with that statement, but there is some truth to it. At first glance, it can seem like a really good idea to remove subsidies from the things that are supposedly doing bad and then moving them over to subsidize regenerative production like this. Unfortunately, it's a little more complicated than that in two big ways. Number one, the dividing line between regenerative and conventional agriculture is not a firewall. It's more like a porous membrane. And for example, get. See, these regenerative hens are eating corn and soybeans. Those crop insurance and occasional direct payments that corn and soybean farmers get as subsidies benefit this system because it makes my feed prices relatively stable. If those prices were to suddenly start going like this and trending in an upward direction, then that would make everything here even more expensive. And even if you're growing something that doesn't require feed grains, like let's say you're doing grass-finished cattle, if you've ever been to a livestock auction, if you've ever used a cattle breeder, if you've ever done cow-calf, anything like that, all of that depends on auction systems, AMS services, etc., that are part of farm subsidies. One of the things regenerative producers tend to not want to acknowledge is that we are very dependent on the conventional system in many, many ways. But that's not even the biggest issue. The biggest issue is the second issue. The first thing I would demand would be a very thorough analysis of how we think conventional agribusiness is going to respond. And let's be real, this is something we don't do well as regenerative producers. We tend to dig our heels in. When our eggs are $7 or $8 a dozen, or our ribeyes are like $35 a pound, we don't cooperate and figure out how to leverage economies of scale while retaining regenerative land ethics in order to get prices down. No, we kind of dig our heels in and do this marketing thing where we say, well, there's good consumers who are going to pay the real price of food, and then there's everybody else who's a cheap slob and they're destroying the planet. But conventional agriculture and agribusiness doesn't do that. They adapt. So just as an example, I could see a scenario where conventional agribusiness says, okay, they're taking away the corn and the soybean subsidies, so the prices are going like this. But you know what other subsidies are there? Fossil fuel subsidies. What do fossil fuel subsidies have to do with agribusiness? Let me tell you something. One of the only things preventing an explosion in lab-grown meat and vertical farming is the fact that it's cheaper to do it the natural way right now. But if it suddenly became more expensive to create meat or eggs or whatever by feeding animals, then that calculus could suddenly shift and big agribusiness starts pouring hundreds of millions, billions of dollars into investment in lab-grown meats that doesn't exist right now. If conventional agribusiness decides to pour all that investment into energy-intensive cultured meat, then suddenly you could see gas prices go up. The cost of heating your home go way up. Or they might do something else. While they're adjusting to the new reality of a world without corn and soybean subsidies, they might start buying up farmland. Billionaires right now are buying up farmland as a defensive hedge against economic uncertainty. There's nothing that stops corporations from doing the same thing in the face of economic uncertainty. And nothing would create more economic uncertainty than suddenly yanking out the price supports from corn and soybeans. So yeah, you might have a bunch of regenerative cattle ranchers who are subsidized by the government, but their landlords are all giant agribusiness corporations. Or maybe big agribusiness just engages in regulatory capture and starts using their lobbying and money and influence to decide what exactly regenerative is and just waters it down like they did with the organic standard. And of course, while this is all going on, it's the consumer that suffers. So this is the thing, like when we're talking about these big ideas of just pulling power plugs out of the agricultural system, you got to be a lot more careful, and we need people who are frankly bigger and better systems and strategic thinkers than people like RFK and his homeboy Joel Salatin. Because both of them are very good at saying things that resonate, but they are very, very weak intellectually, and we need people who think like in three-dimensional chess terms, because that's what's coming.